Hello, my name's Gary Smart. I am the co-writer of the book, The Complete History of Return of the Living Dead.
And I'm Christopher Griffiths, not the writer of Complete History of Return of the Living Dead, but I have shared a burger with Jimmy Carran, who features in this film.
So, myself and Christian Sellers wrote a book in 2010 about the kind of really in-depth knowledge and expertise about Return of the Living Dead series. For me, the second film's always been a favourite. I mean, I watched that when I was very young, and it's kind of a bit more kooky than the first film, but it's got a kind of real kind of place in my heart really for being kind of a bit weird and kind of. I know some fans aren't so keen on it as much as they are the first film, but for me, it's always going to be there. It's kind of my top kind of sequel.
Yeah, well, for my part, I came to see Return of the Dead 2, unlike the first one, quite late, and like you kind of said, you know, I don't downright dislike this film. There's elements I like to it, but I think, as we'll discuss, it's a sort of massive tonal shift from the first one, where it feels the pendulum swung fully to the comedy side.
Yeah, I mean, the first one was kind of one of the first horror comedies, which we know. We animated the first year. I think you're right. This is kind of really is kind of comedy, and I think people were expecting the same tone as the first, as we said. Dan O'Bannon, the very kind of satirical kind of look on the zombie genre, whereas this is kind of more the kind of Marx Brothers kind of Three Stooges kind of approach.
Exactly, and you will be able to learn more about our opinions on Return of the Living Dead Part 1 upon purchasing the Scream Factory edition, where we also feature. So, unfortunately, folks, you're stuck with us again if you've made the fatal error of selecting the second or third or even fourth audio commentary track, but as Gary and I will be talking through this, we're going to leave it to the filmmakers themselves, because we know director Ken Wiederhorn's already provided an audio commentary for this film. So really, I'll be asking you a couple of questions, if you can remember what you wrote back in 2010.
Yeah, I think as you said, we're here just, we're fans of the film, got a lot of love for it. I think, we don't need to talk about too much about the complete making of it. I think we talk about the trivia, and obviously our own opinion of it as well. So, as Chris said, it's going to be a bit of a chat between two kind of fans of the genre and the series.
Perfect.
Okay.
So I'll start then, maybe for a couple of tidbits from the master himself here. So Gary, would you like to give us a bit of an introduction and context to this film and its formation?
Of course. So obviously, Dan O'Bannon wrote and directed Return of the Dead Part 1 in 1985. Very successful. It kind of beat box office records in the sense of Day of the Dead, which came out the same year from Romero. Straight away, they went to greenlight a sequel. And obviously, Tom Fox being his first time really producing a film was the first movie. Now, obviously, he's an old hat at it, and he wants to make a bit more money off the franchise, and he owned the franchise rights now. So he then approached Ken Wiederhorn, as we know, to write the sequel.
So actually, I'm going to fire back on you that one.
Yeah, I know you're going to say.
Because I was supposed to be asking you the questions, but haven't actually read your book in anticipation of this audio commentary. I do believe that Ken Wiederhorn had produced a script. Yeah. And then it was optioned by Tom Fox.
Yeah, so the script obviously, bared some resemblance to the film we're watching today, and obviously Tom Fox optioned it because he wanted a sequel, basically. There are rumours that this was made as a Chud. Remember the Chud the Bud and that kind of films as a sequel, but it's kind of been kind of dismissed over the years as kind of untrue. But this wasn't originally meant to be a sequel to Return of the Living Dead. Tom obviously optioned it from Ken, and they added all the trucks and bits in, and obviously tried to give it the same narrative and kind of and links to the first film.
And so obviously, as we can see here right now, so the main difference we've got here is obviously the lead cast being considerabally younger.
Children,
than those.
yeah.
So there's no nudity on top of
no, there's no punks. First one was about the punks, and obviously this is about kids. So it's that thing about the 1980s, late 80s, where you have a lot of children suddenly become kind of the stars of movies.
Kind of getting major, you get major It vibes watching this, which we are also producing a documentary for.
Well, I think why they did it for, they wanted to. I think this was a 15 when it came out. 15 in the UK particularly.
I think it was an 18.
Was
Sorry,
it?
I'm firing back all these facts at you.
I
now,
think
aren't
you're wrong, but
I'm the
anyway.
expert now.
Well, it was aimed more at children, obviously. We know kids used to watch movies anyway, despite the fact we had the big video nasties in the 80s over here,
Yeah.
and people would watch movies they weren't supposed to watch. So having a group of children as your main star, suddenly then you want to watch it. And that's why I think, for me, I loved the first film, but I was really attracted to this as a kid because it starred a kid.
And I think that's where the difference is coming. It might be the case across, the board for fans, in that I think it's the kind of film that if you saw as a kid, much like your Goonies and everything, you find the familiarity with it. Whereas when I came in, it was probably very much we're in DVD territory by the time I saw it, having been a massive fan of the first film, and so for me it was just a bit of a. I don't want to go as far as say a shock, but it was like, oh, I'm not quite getting the scares, and do you know what I mean?
The funny thing about Return of the Living Dead as a series, you've got 5 films, which no one really talks about 4 and 5, but the first 3 films, the themes are completely different. You've got the one being really that comedy horror, the punk vibe to it as well, the music. 2 is an all-out comedy, if you want to call it that, and obviously 3 is really kind of dark, really. It's that love story.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting for a franchise how it changes, and this sticks out like a sore thumb a little bit to some fans who are really hardcore first film fans, as we've said.
Yeah.
But as we're talking about the kid vibe to it as well. I think it's just great. I think it's got that Goonies vibe to it. You got Stand By Me roughly the same time coming out as well in the late 80s. So you've really got that kind of straight away. It's the dilemma of children versus zombies.
It's funny as well because actually the location of this being like because obviously now for context we've got the kids here. This is a new housing estate they're based on, and of course another thing that I pick up from it is Poltergeist, in that it's
definitely
houses being built by the cemetery, and of course having Jimmy Carran in it as well.
Jimmy
both
Carran
films kind of you could easily maybe extract frames from both films and just sort of go one and the same.
I mean, the scene we've got now, you've got obviously the bullies putting out the trucks and tank, looking very similar to the last film. I think some parts of the tank are slightly different in regards to the design, but it's pretty much the same. Obviously, the Tar Man's going to appear in a second. I mean, we already know what happens when people open the tank in the first film. It doesn't really result in a very...
well, it results in at least a 90-minute film.
But for the people opening the tank... it doesn't end really well for those people. So again, the first one we didn't really know that. Now we know these kids are going to turn to zombies eventually.
Yeah. So, can you talk a bit about the fact that we've already mentioned, we've got Jimmy Carran, and of course we've got Tom Matthews, who we'll see have kind of not necessarily reprised their roles, but recreated
very similar
their roles.
roles,
Very similar. But can you talk to us a bit about the cast? I know there was, some people, there was just no prospect at all of returning, but there were potentially going to be more than...
The interesting thing about Return of the Living Dead was, when the film was made in 85, straight away, all these scripts started coming out, and some of the cast themselves wrote scripts. I know that Jimmy Carran wrote a script for a sequel. I know obviously Don Calfa wrote a script as well, which was with direct continuation. And Dan O'Bannon liked the scripts from the cast, but Tom Fox didn't. He wanted a different direction. So, and also the cast were promised to have their roles reprised. They're all promised to return. So obviously now we've got Jimmy Carran here now with Tom Matthews again, and obviously Suzanne Snyder as well, playing Brenda, who's kind of a bit like the Tina character, a bit more ballsy, and a kind of mix, I think, of Tina and Linnea Quigley's character of Trash, really. She's there's elements of both characters in there, but she's a bit more stronger than Tina was. But obviously Beverly was obviously offered a return, never announced when it came through. There was no phone call. One actor who we'll talk about later on would have been Don Calfa, who was had to audition for this, which we'll go into detail about later on, as the role of Dr. Mandel. But the two returning characters was obviously actors were Jimmy Carran and Tom Matthews, and also Brian Peck. Now, Brian Peck starred as Scuzz in the first film and plays numerous zombies in here, which we'll try and point out during the filming.
I'll note that we do have Gary's copy of Complete History of Return of the Dead as a reference. So if you do hear the sound
if you hear
of turning pages, we do know what we're on about 50% of the time.
50% of the time, yeah. And it was a long time ago we wrote the book. But yeah, I mean, you probably hear the pages going. Alan Trapman, of course, returns as well as the Tarman. Who was in this film and the second film. Sorry, this is the second film. Was in the first film and the second film. Didn't return again. And I think, it does feel like a nice sequel, this one does. But again, it's so different to the first film. But having Jimmy and Tom, it kind of really cements in that history, really, for me.
So going on, you say about the sequel, and you'd mentioned obviously the actor Don Calfa, who I know we will be discussing later for a more relevant point in this commentary, I imagine. But you had touched upon the fact that he had actually. Can you talk a bit about this script for
of course,
the unmade sequel?
He wrote a script called The Revenge of the Living Dead, which was literally set seconds after the first film. Now, in the first film, you have a typical army fuck-up where they deliver the trucks and tanks to the wrong place. Now, same thing happens in number two. Don's number two is that the missile which was launched to blow up Louisville, actually the coordinates are wrong and blows up just outside Louisville. So the characters survive, and obviously you have to go through Louisville, which is infested with zombies, and also the army trying to kill zombies and kill them as well to keep the secret. And it is literally a direct sequel with Frank returning, with Ernie, with Freddie and the gang as well. I think the only person who doesn't really make it was Bert, really, which I think because Clu Gulager wasn't really popular on set, say for the first film, lots of issues with Dan O'Bannon. I think Don felt that let's not write him in the sequel. So it would have been a really kind of nice sequel, really. And we've been trying for years to get it out as a graphic novel, which could still happen. And obviously, Don passed away last year, which is unfortunate. Before obviously that could be made, but Don was obviously really keen on being in number two, and I said he had to audition, which we'll go in details about later on. It's a shame he's not in it, but again...
That's good timing then. Yeah, I just noticed how Jimmy's character just said, what a shame.
What a shame, yeah, exactly, yeah. I mean, the effects you see regards to the zombies are done by Kenny Myers again.
He worked on the
first
film.
He took over from Bill Munns. Bill Munns was sacked, as we know, from the first movie.
And that was with the controversy of the
yellow cadaver, yeah.
The yellow headless cadaver.
Yeah, so he took over from him, and he's back in the sequel. And again, if you look at the zombie designs in this one, they are more EC comic kind of look.
It's just looking at like some of the pictures we have here now, and again, obviously, not trying to get too far ahead in the commentary because we will be seeing the zombies at a later point.
You saw one, just.
They are a bit more. I mean, what's your views in terms of they're more cartoony, aren't they? I mean, again, that kind of matches the tone of this film.
The first film, you've got kind of a mixture of zombies really because of the work of Bill Munns, and obviously that he was sacked, so you've got a bit of Bill Munns, you've got a bit of Kenny Myers, you've got a bit of Larry Odion, you've got a bit of Tony Gardner, whereas this one is mainly Kenny Myers. The Tarman there does look slightly like the original one in the sense of in the tank, but when he does actually break out later on, he does look completely different.
He does, yeah.
And it's played by Alan Bow, but the design is completely different. It's more he's got more facial features as opposed to obviously that skull light of Alan Trapman in the first film. But again, as you said, I think they're really kooky and cartoony really in this one, which adds to the theme of the comedy more than anything. Yeah, the tone is very much comedic tone, and that is in the characters. And again, at the end of the film, which we'll talk about, there's more kind of comedic zombies which will pop up. I mean, there's one going to pop up in a bit regards to the talking head, which we'll discuss. But again, that's it's a throwback to the half corpse, but it's done in a more kooky kind of funny way.
Yeah.
So you've got two characters here. You've got Billy and Johnny, played by Thor Van Lingen and Jason Hogan. Now, both really didn't go on to do much after this. I know that Thor did a commentary for the previous release of this movie on DVD, which goes in great detail about making the film, but it kind of disappeared after this. And obviously the main lad, obviously Jesse, is Michael Kenworthy, again, who disappeared for years and came back out a few years ago when we did the book and obviously started talking about the movie again.
And am I right in saying, because it's been a while, but they features on the extended version of the documentary? Or?
Yeah, Thor didn't, he wasn't available, he's in the book. And
but
Johnny,
Michael Kenworthy
did, he did a little bonus feature, but he was really hard to get hold of when we wrote the book. Michael was, and he literally was nowhere to be found. Didn't have an agent, wasn't in the industry anymore. And when the book came out and we started getting a bit of vibe for it and a lot of good publicity, he then suddenly appeared.
That normally happens.
Yeah, it normally happens, as we know from our previous projects.
Who are these guys?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, looking at the scene now, you've got pretty much the same what happened in the first film. The tank opens,
It's
creates
very
acid
much.
rain.
It's very much like kind of
it's a
kind of-
remake?
it does, yeah. It's the same kind of in what they did with Evil Dead to a certain extent.
lot like
I
Evil
feel
Dead,
like
yeah.
I've seen this before. And again, I think the one thing I like is these two guys here. They do at some point
They
if it's not
acknowledge,
happening, acknowledge like we've been here before. So that's quite. Nice
There's a line coming up, and I know we'll probably miss it, where it's if you like this job, watch your tongue, boy. If you like this job,
Yeah.
Same from the first film,
Yeah.
and actually there's a few lines as well, which later on come in the film, which was from the first film,
Yeah.
really direct. When Jesse's on the phone to the army, it's pretty much the same conversation that Burt Wilson had,
Yeah.
and there's that question mark as well. It's Jesse Wilson and Burt Wilson. Are they related? Is he his granddad? Is there a link there somehow?
Yeah.
He's never really touched upon it at all, but for me, I kind of like to think, there's a relation there. Same surname, same circumstances, and we don't see his parents either. And we don't see his grandparents. We don't know where they are. But Jimmy's playing Jimmy. Jimmy was one of the standout people in the first film, in regards to the comedy.
Steals the show. I mean,
He's the comedic element of the first movie, where most people are playing it straight. He plays it, full comedy, and again, he does it in this one.
there's a lot of kind of memorable characters from the original film, but as the audience, your leading into these films is through these two guys.
Oh yeah, I mean, we've met Jimmy, and Jimmy's amazing. We met him a couple of last year. Obviously, had a meal from him. He's 80 odd, and he's still, completely, like a 25-year-old when you talk to him. And he got such a memory on his films.
Oh, he loves. I remember being challenged about the fact that I'd never really watched, and still haven't. Sorry, a Buster Keaton film. So when he started talking to me about that, and I had to have that kind of, smiled expression on my face of like, oh God, I don't know what he's on about.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh.
But the nice thing about Return of the Dead, it became kind of a family read. I know that Tom Matthews and Jimmy Cameron remained friends after. But the good, interesting point as well is that Jimmy Cameron was really close friends with Tom Fox, and that's the reason why he decided to do the sequel. Despite that not liking the script too much, he decided to do the sequel. And if you hear a growling, that's Chris's dog.
That's my dog Prince, who unfortunately refused to provide,
he likes the film.
provide commentary on this, and that is Prince the dog, not the unfortunately passed away artist. Much to much, I know that his competitor Michael Jackson makes an appearance later.
He does,
on.
yeah.
We
Prince
unfortunately
doesn't,
weren't able to get Prince for this audio commentary.
But as I said, going back, that Tom Fox was friends with Jimmy Cameron. That's why Jimmy Cameron returned and Tom Matthews returned. I know Tom wasn't really happy with the making of his film. There was a lot of issues on the set, a lot of problems with direction. One of the main reasons was, I think people thought that Ken wasn't really a horror fan, didn't understand the horror genre really.
So let's talk a bit about now the director Ken Weedhorn.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Now, having looked at his IMDb, I've seen that it's quite funny because, and again, reading your book, he's obviously dabbled. For someone who's not a fan,
horror,
For someone who's not a fan of horror, he somehow. I mean, he made 1977's Shockwaves,
Peter
which I've
Cushing,
watched once, and
which
I
is a
must
zombie
admit,
film
it's
to a
really
degree.
good atmospheric. Well, it is a zombie film.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Very
I
atmospheric.
think what happens with some directors, I mean, the return actor, which I'd like to mention, is obviously the Colonel Glover.
Of course it is.
And he's
I
back.
never realised it was the same guy.
Same guy, and that's Jonathan Terry. He's back in 1 and 2, playing the same character, which again is that nice link for the first film.
Yeah.
He's actually playing Glover. But just so you know about Ken, is that I think you find some in the genre back in the 80s, especially in the 70s and 80s, if you did a horror film, you were then the horror guy. And I think Ken kind of wanted to get away from that and didn't really want. He kind of submitted this script, not thinking much of it, and then ended up getting it obviously greenlit and thinking, bugger, I've got to do the film now.
So having read your book,
Again,
so this is kind of from you, but I'll be the one to relay the information. He had obviously written a script because I believe Ken Weedhorn had actually gone to like a screenplay school, or
He did, yeah.
So took screenplay classes, and he wrote this, and obviously. He wanted to primarily deal with comedy, but then sort of incorporated the horror, or found that you can bring comedy out of horror. Most horror can,
I think which worked really well back in the early 80s, mid 80s mainly, with obviously Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead. It worked, but it's a really hard thing to get right.
It's a difficult balance,
hard.
I think, and to be honest, that's why.
I think this falls a little bit flat because
it just turns too much towards the comedy,
which isn't a bad thing. And I think that, but when you're a sequel, I think people have an expectation. I think over the years, people have come to love this film more because they understand that. Obviously, sometimes you can't be exactly a carbon copy.
Well, you've got. I suppose you've just sort of said it. You've had this isn't. Horror comedies kind of primarily been found in sequels, and so today you've got. You had at that point. Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 being a dramatic shift from the original movie, to which I believe that was incredibly successful. It works really well for me, the second film. And then you've got the likes of Evil Dead, turning more to comedy. But then I think those have been successful where you follow up a serious film by just completely flipping it 180 degrees. Yeah, not 360. And whereas like this, and also I'm reminded of the House franchise. It works the same because the originals are horror comedies. I think Return of the Living Dead's the better example, but then you've got sequels which just completely throw into the comedy territory. Like House 2 is almost not even a horror film.
Yeah, but then you get something like Reanimator where Bride is a horror comedy still, and they kind of managed to keep that tone. But again, you had the same writer as well. They're doing that though, and you had Brian Yuzna was very much involved. Whereas I think Tom Fox, he was a banker before in Chicago, and he was an investor. Yeah. He obviously decided to be his producer in 1985 or 84, 83 when he bought the rights of John Russo for the sequel to Night of the Living Dead, which was Return of the Living Dead, the unofficial sequel. And again, we can go into detail on that about the rights and the kind of stuff on that film, but we've talked about it before on my last commentary. Yeah. But Tom wasn't really a filmmaker. So I think for him it was literally just let's just sell it and obviously just make the movie and make some profit off it. Yeah. This was done for less money, so $6.5 million this was made for, which is less than the first film. So he's kind of let's make it cheap and let's make a profit off it based on the title. I think a little bit of that is probably here. Where we got a great title, great obviously critical response, and we made a few quid on it. Let's try and obviously monopolise on that and make a sequel pretty quick. So he obviously opts for Ken's script, which isn't really a horror comedy; it's a comedy horror. Basically.
Much. Yeah.
And I said before, we've talked about you have a kid in it straight away. I mean, some people have said, critics have said that this is kind of like E.T. a little bit in tone. That you've got the kids and the adults, and there's an adventure on.
Oh, and here's Tom,
man.
Wow,
See the difference in it.
It's so much more kind of cartoony.
It is, and the teeth, the eyes. Look at the size of the eyeballs.
I didn't want to say this in advance of seeing it, but he's put on timber here.
Oh yeah,
That's way of saying he looks a bit fat.
He does, yeah.
And therefore, I think the unfortunate thing about this particular Time Man in comparison to the original is they really utilised Alan Troutman's frame.
Movement, yeah.
Because
there's hardly any movement here.
And whereas this could almost have been played by anyone, this incarnation. I mean, actually, you can see sort of
a little bit there, but it's the only time you see him. You never see him again in this film. Whereas obviously we know the Time Man's 3 or 4 scenes throughout the film.
You never see the guy again now. So you kind of have Alan come back, who's a great kind of mime artist and puppeteer. Yeah, and you don't utilise him. I suppose in this particular instance is that he's got that iconic. He's an iconic zombie of the glory days of zombie movies. I guess you call it glory days. The zombie craze is still happening. But, much like Bub from Day of the Dead, you instantly think.
But you don't think of Time Man Part 2. You think of Time Man Part 1.
Well, exactly. But I suppose this is just kind of a nod. And whereas he was the focal zombie of the original film, I suppose it's kind of like that's.
There would have been some issues, I suppose, with William Stout as well, because he didn't come back. William Stout didn't for this production.
Oh, he didn't.
No, he did not. No, I think he was kind of dead against it because of the script. So you've got obviously he owns the rights to the Time Man look. So by having him not be involved, that might cause, which I know it caused issues in my later films. I know on 4 and 5, Stout was not happy whatsoever with regards to the design of Time Man being utilised in that film, because it is a little bit similar to the first film. Yeah. It's more skeletal. So you're going to have a different designer completely now. And obviously Kenny knows William Stout, but he wants to put his own stamp on it. Exactly. These zombies here now, look, they're comedic in their look. Yeah. They're not rotting flesh hanging off them. They're more kind of an AC Comics Creepshow kind of vibe to them. But again, it's probably what they're after. You know, what's the target audience?
I mean, believe me, I think, you know...
This reminds me exactly like the design of zombies from Thriller.
It was,
you know, and there's a Thriller link later on, but they are kind of, you know, it's more exaggerated features. Yeah. It's not your Dawn of the Dead. It's not your Day of the Dead. It's not your Return of the Living Dead. And Return of the Dead, as I said before, there's always a mixture in there because you've got 3 to 4 different artists doing designs on a low budget with a director who didn't know what he wanted.
Just like you can see instantly this, you know.
I mean,
there's a. I wouldn't. Oh,
now this is that's Brian Peck.
Brian Peck.
Yeah, on the
Brian
glasses,
Peck, number 1. Yep.
But I just think it's kind of, you know, as we said, you've got different design team, different makeup team, and it's going to be different interpretation completely.
Now, just looking at this shot, it has been a while since I've seen this film.
And that's just
it's very
stand on your hand, here we go, bang, you know, would he feel pain?
Just watching...
Now it's on in your head.
Now just watching this sequence, because it's been a while since I've seen it. Did the zombies only walk in this one?
They only walk in... no, they do. I think they do run as well. Yeah,
okay,
they do.
They're just getting warmed up.
Yeah. When obviously, you know, they're in the back of the van throwing the brains out, they're running after the van.
Yeah.
But, you know, you just saw them 2 sequences there, and someone falling down a hole, and then a zombie moving his hand. It's that self-awareness that they're going to be injured. It's kind of... And there's a bit now when with Brenda...
It's adding the personality to it.
Yeah. It's adding person. And Brenda now confronts a zombie in a second. She pulls his jaw off, and it's that comedic look. So you're going that completely different vibe now. Yeah. But again, it's a good thing, I think, because it's kind of that tonal shift from the first movie. You want it to stand out differently because O'Banner's not involved, you know, and we know O'Banner's not involved because it was such a hard time in the first film. Why would you have him back? You wouldn't have him back, you know, and you know he was, for all sense of the word, a pain really because of obviously his own issues, but results in an amazing film.
Oh yeah, no.
Whereas,
I mean,
you know,
Dan O'Bannon, I do believe is like he's that kind of one filmmaker who I wish there could have been more from him. Work.
Whereas you're gonna get people now say about Ken Wiedehorn and Beast, he wasn't interested, he didn't understand horror. Yeah. It made the set difficult because you've got 2 veterans of Return of the Living Dead. Through actually, including obviously, you know, Jonathan Terry as well and Brian Peck, who expect something different really from the director. And I know there's a story that Don told me that he had a phone call late one night from the set, and you know he said to Jimmy, Karen, and Tom after, what's it like? You know, what's the vibe? And he went, it's terrible. We hate it. You're better off not being in the film. And obviously that for Dom, that's kind of like, you know, I'm glad I didn't get the role. You know, I'm glad I failed in the audition. But it's kind of, it does set the tone a little bit. Kind of, you know, the behind the scenes of this movie. I don't think it comes across on screen. I said it's kind of, it has become a kind of really kind of fan favourite really, because it's different.
Well, I mean, the reception to the Blu-ray which we're recording this commentary from, I think speaks volumes because, you know, my Facebook, most of my social media pages just literally was
Return of the Dead.
So there's the audience for this film. I think much to its flaws, and I'll admit myself as not as big a fan of this film as the original. I still own. I mean, I own this DVD we're watching right now.
I think fans
so.
have been waiting for this release for a very long time on Blu-ray.
Len, is there something I should know? You're supposed to be dead. Holy shit! This is big fucking trouble! We gotta get Brenda, man. She's all alone.
Brenda, what about me? You selfish jerk. Oh, I am, oh Lord. Forgive me. They're dead. I thought you were finished with them.
I got a feeling he's not listening right now. We gotta handle this thing, whatever it is. But first we gotta get Brent. Come on.
No! The road!
Yeah,
This way!
go. Are you okay? Are you okay?
I'm okay. Joey, what did you do?
He didn't do anything! It's me they're after! It's my sins! Hail Mary, full of grace, full of grace!
Doing this.
No. Oh, the Lord is with us! Oh, save this sinner, please!
The light's over there.
Now, someone I hadn't mentioned before, there he is himself.
Yes.
Or as we know and love him, Bobby Briggs from Twin Peaks, which you didn't realise
I
until
didn't-
just before
you know
this
what?
commentary.
I've never been a fan of Twin Peaks, as you know, and then Chris got me into it after many years of knowing Chris.
You're welcome.
And I absolutely loved it. I just kind of really became obsessed with it. And we were sitting talking in a ride. It was only when we were just looking for the book, we were like, shit, that actually is Bobby from Twin Peaks.
Who
And I
you
think-
actually got in
Who I spoke
who
to,
you've
yeah,
spoken
many
to,
years ago,
but
yeah.
never,
when we
never
did the book.
twigged that.
Never twigged, but again, not being a fan of Twin Peaks, I didn't really, you don't put the connection together.
Now, this was his first
this
film.
one of his
19
first
years
films.
old.
Yeah, he'd done a couple of kind of made-for-TV movies, I think, before this.
Yeah.
But again, he's got a pretty good role in it, substantial role really in this.
Yeah.
It's really weird because you watch the first film and you got Tom Matthews. He looks like a 18, 19-year-old Tom Matthews in the first one. This looks like a 30-year-old. It's only 2 years difference.
Oh, what? Tom himself.
And the character himself is meant to be older in this, and he kind of.
Well, talking a bit about Tom Matthews, really, great guy, by the way.
Oh, he's amazing,
Not
yeah.
only have I shared a burger with Jimmy Carrey, I've sat on the complete opposite side of the table to a large meal of a bunch of us.
Return of the Dead, yeah.
Return of the Dead.
We are popular.
The only bit of conversation I had with him was when I sort of crept over to the other side of the table where his family was like, hello, and he just sort of looked at me like, you want a photo, don't you? And I got 2 of them. But, I mean, yeah, so talking about Tom Matthews, obviously, having appeared in the original Return of the Dead, but of course, playing Tommy Jarvis, the most, aside from Corey Feldman in Friday the 13th Part 4, kind of the most significant incarnation of Tommy Jarvis in
I think so, yeah.
Jason
One of my-
Lives.
yeah.
And of course, he's
Yeah.
made a return again in recent
the
years
game,
in
yeah.
the game. So I've not only had dinner with Tom Matthews, I've played Tom Matthews.
played with him?
Played with him.
I
That
think
came
I'd
across
like
a
to
bit
hear
wrong.
that, yeah.
I do apologise
I mean,
if
if you
there's any
played
legal
with
issues.
Linnea
well,
Quigley, fair enough, but not Tom Matthews.
it's strange, isn't it? What's wrong with Tom? I mean,
He's a good-looking
great,
guy,
but-
and he's still a good-looking
you know,
guy.
he's 20
Not that, he's probably not listening to this anyway.
No, he probably isn't. Is
I don't think he had fun with this.
Yeah, no.
I think, as I said, it's we're very close to the cast now, so you kind of get their views on the sequels, really.
Yeah. Well, the first one was like I mean, it's funny that what you'd said about the 2 guys sort of saying to Don that they didn't have this was like many films of this era.
The one
everyone has
thing
their
I'll just
problems.
say is that what was quite funny, what Tom said to us, is that the one thing you really liked about this movie, the only redeeming feature of making it was the craft services. So I think having good food on set was a bonus for him, really, more than anything else.
It's making it worse. Doesn't
But
help
again,
him
I
on the
just
diet.
think. But again, I think you look back in time. But he probably spoke to Tom now about it, and he watched it again. You're back with Jimmy for a start. And actually, I think this is an important part of the franchise. When you got a franchise which really dipped with 4 and 5,
Yeah.
it's good to have this film now because it is.
It's-
we got again Glover. It is a sequel in a sense.
I mean, I suppose what's quite, for the most part, I guess you could say is quite good about the original trilogy is that each film is its own. I mean, at the end of the day, there's
standalone,
a bit
isn't
of
it?
links going on here. There's obviously links to the third one, which I haven't seen in a while, but of course, which is the trioxin, without a doubt. You've got Brian Peck, who's a consistency across all 3 films. but each one's got its own identifiable
You
features.
don't have to watch the original one,
Any of them.
previous or the, or
Yeah,
the
no.
sequel.
So
to,
I mean,
yeah.
because the third one was kind of a dramatic departure from, whereas this kind of is almost like a loose remake, but obviously a sort of. I mean, actually, just watching this now, it's stylistically, it's pretty beautiful. I guess
It's
very
nicely shot.
very
It's not-
studio-y looking.
Well, most of it was shot in the studio, actually.
It
the
was,
film.
was
yeah,
it?
yeah, most it was. Obviously, for reasons being is you've got a young cast.
Now-
You've got a low budget and young
Yeah.
cast. So what you don't do is obviously have a young cast on location. Now, some bits were shot on location, obviously, like the external shots here,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Storm Drain and whatnot. But the majority of stuff, like the meat packing factory and the hospital, which you see in a bit, were all shot on location, shot in a studio,
Yeah, yeah.
on sets. Because as you said, I think that is Brian Peck as well, I believe.
Oh, wow.
Is because you got your restraints with young actors.
Yeah.
You can't have them certain hours.
Yeah.
And that obviously that was causing problems for Ken. You're not interested in the genre too much. You've got a low budget. You've got Tom Fox on your back, and you've got young kids as well to try and obviously work around them, manipulate them to get as much out of them as possible.
Yeah, because I suppose at this point, we'd heard this story before actually off someone, I think, in regards to RoboCop, about kids featuring in that film, and obviously the unions, because they were on fire at this point, the unions. Because of that fatal accident on the set of Twilight Zone,
when Vic Morrow
was Jason Lee's dad,
yeah.
and he had the two kids with him, didn't he?
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that was a massive shift.
Oh, he
for
nearly
unions.
sent down Spielberg and John Landis.
It did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he went down for
They
that.
went to court, didn't they? Yeah.
So I think, you kind of.
So it limits it kind
Limitations,
of affects,
yeah.
So to be honest, I think, am I right in saying, did Wiederhorn say in your book,
Yeah.
I'm thinking, about it might have not been the greatest idea to be like, okay, we're going to do, a horror comedy, with kids,
I think you're right. Yeah. Definitely.
primarily set at night. You're already causing yourself some massive
You're already
dramas.
creating dramas and you're creating issues and barriers for yourself already. And the other barrier, of course, is obviously you've got a low budget and always to make a sequel to a popular film.
Yeah.
And the first one was very popular because of the soundtrack. A lot of the reason is, you've got a punk soundtrack in the first movie, which in the 80s, UK and Germany and Europe, they loved the first movie because it had that very British punk, and a lot of bands from the UK were featured in it. Now, 2 years later, or 3 years later, sorry, you've got this film, which has the soundtrack's not in any way punk.
No.
It's no way.
But I suppose
the same.
I mean,
it's kind of
the
interesting.
punk thing had kind of surely. I mean,
It died down a little bit, but again, that tonal shift we talked about before, you're completely tonally shifting away from what you've already got before you.
Yeah.
And I think it's only 3 years. It's not a long time.
no, it's not.
And it's and we know that punk in the UK and Europe kind of disappeared mid-80s. So really, you're at the cusp of it. Really, with Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
2 years later, it was gone. And it's back now. To a degree. That's why I think we're trying to find new audience, and I hope this finds a new audience as well. Because again, people appreciate this film as a cult classic. Now, it's a film for a lot of people where it's when you were kids you watched it, so the memory of it. As we talked before about RoboCop 3,
Yeah.
kind of the same thing really. The third RoboCop film, it's the memories what are more powerful than the movie itself.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I think, as you said, when this was announced, it was suddenly very popular in regards to, my God, the making, finally getting a Blu-ray release
Yeah.
and its collector's edition, because people have that real fond memory of it.
We are still
So
recording.
yeah,
don't
so
worry.
yeah, we're still recording. So another zombie here, again comedic, grabbing his hair, smashing through the doors. I just think it's kind of, are these zombies as threatening as the first film? Not really, no.
I mean, again, you're getting kind of they seem a lot slower in this one. Whereas the first one, I mean, it was the first running.
The first
zombie?
running, you had obviously City of the Living Dead, which were kind of infected radioactive.
No, that's Nightmare City, isn't
That's
it?
what I meant.
Yeah,
Same
is that the
difference.
Umberto
Yeah,
Lenzi
not
one?
yet. So,
and they've got friggin' Uzis in that.
Yeah,
as well,
yeah,
haven't they?
they're very intelligent. But again, are these zombies already infected with radiation?
Radiation, ladies and gentlemen. You've
It's
just
a new
learned
word.
a
It's
new word.
yeah. But so they're infected again. Like the irritating thing for me was is 28 days later they're not zombies, they're infected, and that's pretty much similar I think with this with Nightmare City. So maybe Return of the Dead was the first running zombies, first intelligent zombies, and first brain-eating zombies as well.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, these are brain-eating zombies in here, which we'll see later on with the cow brains and calf brains being thrown at them. But again, I think I mean, this bit, just pushing each other out of the way. There's obviously, when they discussed making this film, the tonal shift was a deliberate choice to go with that kind of late 80s kind of feel regards to comedy. I mean, if this film was made, if Return of the Dead was made now, the first film, and the sequel was made 3 years after, it would be very much tonally the same.
Yeah.
You wouldn't get this difference. And even if a director was different, you would still have the same themes in it, the same tone. I mean,
as we are witnessing right now.
I mean, we even interviewed this lady as well. Played the
Did you?
yeah, we did.
No
aerobics,
way.
Yeah. When we do a book, we do everybody. We don't pee around. And that was Hanana Sego, her name was.
Can you repeat that? You'll notice, folks, if you hear more of us, this is probably the last commentary we'll ever do.
Yeah, sorry.
Gary's got a good knack at mispronouncing. Oh, you're right, that is quite a mouthful.
Hanala Sagal.
Hanala Segal.
No relation to Stephen.
No.
Hopefully not.
No, maybe she's related to Matthew McCoggley, as you pronounced it on that other.
What film? What documentary? That was on Return. That was.
And was it? What's the name of the woman who's in Texas Chainsaw Massacre Next Generation?
Renee Zellweger.
There.
Anyway, back to Return of the Dead Part 2, Christopher. So now we're going to be introduced to Philip Bruns, who was a stand-up comedian, very popular.
Right.
Very, very popular back in the 70s and 80s in the USA. He plays the role of Doc Mandel, who company Minute, and he should have been Don Kaufer. I mean, Don Kaufer auditioned for the role, and it would have been great, I think, to have him. I mean, I love Philip Bruns' interpretation of his character, but I think it would have been so nice to have Don back. And that kooky kind of doctor.
Now, I'm trying to guess this before we approach the scene, and once again, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've seen this. But if memory serves me right, is he kind of quite a cartoony?
He's supposed to be drunk throughout the film.
He's a drunk, but is he quite animated?
He's animated. He's very kind of theatrical, flamboyant, and I think that's. I know when I spoke to Don about it, and other people mentioned about Phil's performance was a little bit kind of. Again, too comedic. He really took it to a different level, whereas didn't need that, maybe.
And the thing with Don in the original
Don played
film
it straight, yeah.
He played it straight. He had some great comic reactions to what was going on around him, but the whole embalming process, you watch him. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah.
Embalming? Cool.
Embalming, yeah.
Embalming, when you first encounter him, is like that of an actual...
Embalmer, it's an expert.
Embalmer.
Yeah. I mean, his
Yeah.
method, Don. I mean, Don really put a lot of work into it. But I think it would be nice to have him in this. But that's not taking anything away from Philip Bruns at all.
No.
I think he's a great actor. He adds a bit of variety to this, I think, regards to one of the lead older people with Jimmy and Tom from the first one. Maybe if you had Don in it, it would have been too heavy on the reliance on the first movie success and the characters. But I just think it would be nice. I mean, I would have liked it. We were close to Don as a company and as friends.
Yeah. He's what brought us together.
He was, literally, yeah. So I think it would have been nice to have him in it. But again, as I said, it's kind of... It's a nice performance from Philip, I think, in this.
Yeah.
And obviously now, Billy's mum.
I recognise her.
Yeah, she.
Do I get the IMDb out?
Yeah.
Do I?
But she obviously, she gets killed. Your son obviously was really looking for zombie.
There's
and
Billy's
bit
mum.
on the head.
And I recognise her for something. Yep, she dies.
Sally Smith. But I know at 4 actually, who plays Billy, actually auditioned for the role of Jesse. I don't think he had to look for a young Jesse, really.
He looks like a bad kid.
He does look a bad kid, and I think before he makes himself for does that, he has that bully kind of unique vibe, which wouldn't have gone well for like a.
He's probably a really nice lad, but we're just like.
I'm sure he grew into his face. Looking at pictures of it before, you did grow into your face, which is good. But he got you a really good role in this film.
Oh, here he is.
Here he is, yeah.
Okay,
I mean, look at the kookiness straight away. But imagine Don doing that. I mean, it's Alma Fudd.
Yeah.
Bugs Bunny.
Now, we were talking a bit. I'll tell you what, let's throw some, the audience some trivia that they will
course,
never need to know about yourself. Am I right in saying you worked in a mortuary?
I did, yes. When I was 16 years old, I worked in a mortuary for my summer job and then a holiday job. I wanted to get into that at one stage.
Now, was that based upon your love of...
Yeah, it was this.
Really was?
Yeah, Return of the Living Dead, yeah. And I was interested, horror films has always been, important to me. One quick, and that's Fari Ackerman, who's well known regards to the sci-fi world, massive famous monsters, and having him was a nice little cameo, I think, And again, I think the interesting thing was,
he rocks up?
Yeah, but the interesting thing was that despite him being this legend in sci-fi and horror, Ken Weirder had no idea who he was. I think that kind of pissed off the cast and crew a little bit, especially like the makeup crew. This is a legend on set, and they just know who he is. And I think that's where people started to realise really that Ken, for all his will, making this film, didn't really know the genre very well.
No.
And for the horror elements of the film, you've got to know horror.
Yeah.
You've got to know where them beats are. We've made our own kind of films, and we've discussed before about them beats in films. But you've got to have those layers where that's going to be the key moment for that horror jump.
Yeah.
You don't know that, you kind of do yourself no favours really. A famous scene and bit which Dom is very unhappy about is the hand coming through the door, where the hand gets chopped off and comes through the door and starts running around the car. Now, Don himself argues that his original script, which I've seen, Revenge of the Living Dead, actually features that scene.
Oh, really?
The exact same thing happens. The hand gets cut off from a zombie and it goes running around the car and they have to chase him around the vehicle. And this is it now happening. So Don does feel that was taken from his film, but obviously due to legal reasons we can't verify that, confirm or deny, but it is interesting that it does happen in this.
We sound like we're kind of like representatives for the Don Calfer
estate, yeah.
But I think, our main connection as a company, or at least for yourself, was through Don. So most of your information.
Yeah, I've read the script, I've read the treatment, and that's from 1985. That treatment was written, and it does include this exact scene. It literally is, and it could be a coincidence, and it's there in black and white. Yeah, I've seen it. And in the graphic novel which we are working on, have been for a few years, it features in that scene. That scene does feature in the graphic novel.
Now, I've completely forgot what I was going to ask you. So if you've got anything else to throw in, I'll try and conjure up the question in my head again.
There's a bit of trivia on this scene. Apparently, you do see the special effects guy's actual arm appear in this. But this
is the
there. It's behind his shoulder. Then you just saw it in black. But again, this is before.
Wait till you watch the Blu-ray.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but this is before the Addams Family. And you've got another comedian grabbing someone's testicles, and then again in a minute comes out the window and sticks his finger up, gives him the middle finger.
Oh,
here we go. There we go.
Post Evil Dead.
Yeah. So it's kind of
Post Evil
Dead 2
and post Max.
But that's also pre Addams Family, which you watch the Addams Family movie with Thing running around. Yep. It's amazing how he did that, but that wasn't too bad. From 1988, on a low budget. You can see it was a guy in a black suit hiding behind him in the car. But again, it's kind of when you watch this in theatrical or on VHS back in the 80s, you wouldn't have seen that because of the resolution.
Yeah.
It's only because of the Blu-rays that we start seeing things now, which is a shame.
Scream Factory going to be reviewing this commentary going, ooh, they're slated.
Yeah, this line here, we've been here before. It's a nice sort of nod to the first film, I think. You just, we know they've been here before, and exactly the same thing happens to two of them. One thing that's different, because I might forget knowing me, is that whereas in the first film, Freddy embraces his zombiness and Frank doesn't, in this film,
it's roles reversed.
No, Joey does embrace it by biting Brenda's head, but also Ed himself embraces it and eats an army officer. So he's kind of like, little tonal shift. That was a bit of boring trivia, but it makes me laugh. Haha.
the world is a better place for knowing that.
This is a set, as we said before. Again, filming in a real hospital would have been at night time, and hospital was closed. If like hospitals do close,
I mean,
at
it
night,
looks
pretty
great,
yeah.
authentic, to be honest.
But again, that's going to increase your budget straight away.
Yeah.
Having to build that, we know again.
So then, therefore,
you film
you're
location,
kind of,
your budget's down straight away. But £6.5 million doesn't go very far on a film with a lot of cast, a lot of special effects, licensing scores, as we know, and also obviously building sets, which is an issue. Now, this is an interesting thing for me. You've got a zombie apocalypse happening to a degree, or a zombie attack on a town, and you let the little kid wander off. You know, it's kind of interesting. It wanted to stay together.
Guess there were no unions within the film's
No.
narrative then.
I mean, the issue of pinching unions is an interesting point that Tom got himself in trouble, really. He was interviewed just before his film was made, and he bragged that it was going to be a non-union film. And then guess what happened? The first day of filming, they got picket lines, and there's people picketing about a union. We know in the States, particularly, it's very strong union minded, especially in the 80s. It was really big, and you know they could shut a film down really. And this had a lot of issues. So again, feeling sorry for Ken, you've got a producer who doesn't know the business very well and opens his mouth. Gets an interview in Variety magazine and starts talking about, we're going to have non-union on this. Suddenly,
we're going to kill real people.
Yeah.
So, speaking about Tom Fox, has he, beyond Return of the Living Dead, is there anything?
No, Tom was involved in part 3 only by name only because he did a weird thing Tom did with regards to rights when he sold them to Lorimor, which is obviously Warner Brothers. It was a 3-year reversal, so every 3 years it reversed back to him the rights would.
Okay.
So when he did this, he's involved as a producer, but Lorimor owned the rights for Return of the Living Dead. 3 years later, then part 3 comes out through TriStar. And obviously because Tom owned the rights again then, and he sold it to TriStar, or licensed, whatever you want to call it, again only name only, and then the rights came back to him, obviously for 4 and 5, which he was involved with until he passed away.
Okay, so
and he was involved beginning now.
That's 2005?
2005, and he passed away in 2006, I believe.
I've not had the pleasure of watching 4 and 5.
No,
I'm not sure I would.
I'm hoping that Shout don't release them. But if you do, we'll do a commentary, no problem whatsoever. What happened is now the rights are all over the place. You know, no one really knows where they lie.
We discussed, didn't we?
We had an idea for a sequel. We had a really good idea, actually. So anyone's listening who's got the rights, our sequel's going to be amazing. It's going to be a direct sequel.
You love and kindness as payment.
It's going to be really good.
Not like that.
Yeah. But we actually spoke to Anthony Antoli Fridas, who's a chap who now owns the title rights to Return of the Living Dead and sequel rights, who he purchased them off Fox. So he owns them every 3 years, again, that cycle, back and forwards. And he was going to make a 6th film, which when we discussed our idea with him back in, when was that, Chris? 2015?
It was on the way back from, 2014.
Leviathan, we discussed it with him, and he was in the process of making a 6th film called Return of the Dead Genesis, which never actually happened. No, it never happened.
Do you know where I got to?
No idea, but we kind of offered our script. And actually
was anything online about it at the time?
Nope, nothing.
So there's some.
We just give it a spoiler then. But again, I think he's going to shoot it in South America.
Yeah.
And obviously you got part 4 and 5 being shot in Romania as back-to-back movies,
which they did with a lot of.
Number 5 is a direct sequel to number 4, yet completely ignores number 4, the happenings, what happened in that film.
Really?
Yeah, completely ignores it. But anyway, that's another story itself. Read the book. We're back now to Return of the Dead Part 2. And this is the Wilsons' grandparents' house, I believe. So, is that Bert Wilson from the first film? We don't know.
God, yeah.
He's not there.
Nope.
Again, it would be nice to
Not a bad question, but
not a bad question, but put a picture on the wall at least. Do something, little nods. You know what I mean?
What indicates that this is the Wilsons' residence?
They just said it.
Okay.
Are you watching the film, Christopher?
I'm
No, they've gone to obviously look at their grandparents, obviously for help, and obviously they've been evacuated like the rest of the town.
It's quite subtle. I mean, you get all
it's
these
very
nods,
subtle, yeah.
You know, and it's. I mean, well, you get subtle and you get not so subtle. I.e., a la Friday the 13th 6, which is at Cunningham Road and
Yeah,
Vincent Price store, and if I remember that rightly. But I mean, I'd never noticed that. I didn't realise until they actually gave.
Well, the
that
lines are
to
virtually line for line. When the army officer talks to Jesse on the phone, when he phones the number of a tank, it's virtually the same. And interesting about the number of a tank is, if you phone that number back in 1988, you get through to a hotline, and then you'd be given a free shirt.
Really?
Yeah, you phone the number.
What was on the shirt?
It was a really kooky cartoony design. It was 4 different designs, like 4 or 5 designs of Return of the Dead Part 2. You phone the number, you gave your details, and you're given a shirt. I think that's quite nice.
Interesting you should say that, because actually my first encounter with Return of the Living Dead 2, like awareness, should we say, and probably pre-seeing the first film even, was I think my old man, Gareth Griffiths, as you mentioned, had...
Old man means dad in the
Old man-
UK.
No, it means old man in America.
Really?
Old man's old man in America. I got it from that. I got it from Jaws. Fact of the day, folks. But he had the T-shirt.
I'm right.
He had the T-shirt.
Yeah, I had a few of them over
and
the
I
years.
can't. I think I've tried. You know what? I think the zombie
Doesn't
that was
fit.
on it.
Zombie what?
The zombie that was on it, I think, was Brian Peck's
It was, yeah.
woman.
Yeah.
And it was, that kind of like bumpy material, where it's, it wasn't.
It's really weird. It's like a foamy kind of. It's like a 3D kind of. It's
3D
really weird.
effect.
Yeah.
And anyway, it had that just when you thought it was safe to be dead. And
Yeah,
I remember
that's
my
it.
mother being mortified when she
You're
picked me
wearing
up
it,
from
yeah.
youth club at about 7 years old, having worn that T-shirt, and now they're completely in vogue. These T-shirts. That was in a day where I suppose they were not quite as commonplace as they are today.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting that they would do a kind of T-shirt on a phone call, but again, it's kind of, I think it's quite a nice little marketing piece for a film like this. And those shirts are on eBay. You can see them around still. Those Return of the Part 2 shirts. Yeah. But again, it's nice. I think it's a nice little touch to it.
Is he using the same audio commentary equipment we are?
I think he is.
He
Yeah.
is, isn't he? Yeah. Actually, his is better.
An interesting thing about Michael Kenworthy, if you look very close on the Blu-ray edition, he has one eye different colour to the other.
Really?
Yes, he does, yeah. And I only noticed that because Michael asked me a few years ago, many years ago actually, to do a banner for him for his conventions, when he first went to conventions. And when I submitted the first piece of art to him, he went, let you know, pigment in my eye is different on the one eye to the other. One's brown, one's green, I believe.
Oh, he's a David
Yeah,
Bowie.
yeah. You don't really know. Yeah,
No.
you notice on the Blu-ray edition, which we're watching now, of course.
Yeah. Are we?
We should be because we're doing a
We're
commentary
doing
on
the
it.
commentary. Yeah. We are.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Shout. That's just killed that
That
conversation.
really murdered the
That
conversation.
was one. Yeah,
the
so you see
debate
there, look there. That was the best bit of trivia you're probably going to have out of us, and you just destroyed it.
I know. I'm sorry.
Okay. But Michael went on to star in, is it the Blob remake? I'm sure he was in.
He had been.
He had, yeah.
Had
oh,
been,
this before,
he
was
had
it?
been.
Oh, okay.
That's 86, the Blob remake.
And I think he made a lot of TV after this and kind of disappeared, as we said earlier on.
Like a lot of child actors tend
Yeah.
to do, don't they?
Now, this is another one of the comedic elements where he gets shot, I think, in the chest and his legs come off, and he somehow then
Shot in the chest and the legs come off. I can't wait to see this.
He separates his torso separates because he gets shot in the chest
Spoiler alert.
or
ladies and
stomach.
gentlemen.
Spoiler alert, yeah. But again, it's that kind of practical effects by Kenny Myers, which are great. I think he's a fantastic artist. Kenny is.
What else is Kenny worked
Kenny's
on?
done lots of films, lots and lots of films. Can't remember.
Scrounging those papers. Scrounging
He
those
did a
papers.
lot, But Kenny, he obviously did the Return of the Dead Part 1, as we said. I think he did save that film. He did, and you can tell the difference in the designs in the Part 1, who's who. It's going to really stand out, really, on who's who. And I'm just trying to blab a little bit now, and just while Chris gets his trivia up, because we are experts on this film, as you know.
Of course we are, yeah, we are.
But I have aged, 9 years since I wrote the book, so...
Oh no, I think off the top of my head, just waiting for this link to open, he's worked on a lot of films, actually.
Lincoln, I remember.
Lincoln.
He worked on. Was it Lincoln?
Yeah, I think it was.
John
was
Carter,
it,
I
was
think.
It, and then A Million
Pirates
Ways to Die in
of
the
the
West. And then
Caribbean.
Bridge of Spies.
I think
And then
it
the
was.
BFG.
BFG,
And then-
yes. I think he did that, and I think he did...
And I think Medal of Honor, the TV series. Oh, that's not out yet. Oh,
no. I think he did Backstreet Boys. That's
Yep.
No, it wasn't that.
Oh, wait, and the page is now loading.
War of the Worlds, I remember him
So he's
doing.
actually worked a lot with
He has,
Spielberg then.
yeah.
So
So, he's done a lot.
he has.
Now, this zombie here, I'm sure he's featured one of the feature zombies on some of the marketing materials and posters. Back of the VHS when he has his face burnt off now. Basically what happens, he gets the gas in his face and he's just literally a skull and he's all mouldy. You see that image quite a lot really with regards to marketing
Now
of this
is
film,
that the
which you
image
see
of
now.
the...
There, this one here.
Really?
Yeah, I've seen it quite a lot on posters and backs of the VHS.
Now, for me, the poster was always the kind of the mist of the
mist
it
with
was
the skull
now
in,
very
yeah.
much actually similar to as we talk about it, Fright Night.
Right, not very, I'm not sure about the artist, to be honest. It might be the same artist. I don't 100% know, but it is very similar. It's got that same kind of style, isn't it? You know, the cloud has the face in it.
With the
and
kind
again,
of the suburban setting at
when
the
you
bottom, isn't it?
You look
with
at the poster of the
graveyards.
first film, you've got the punks behind the gravestone, and then this one, you've got various designs in the posters, but you've got the most iconic one, which is the mist with the face coming out of the graveyard, and then you've got the very cartoony ones then, of the really kind of EC comic style interpretation of Kenny's work, all obviously on the poster as a cartoon image. Now we've got obviously the deterioration of both Joey and Ed into their zombie form. It's not as dramatic as the first film. I mean, when they turn in the first one, it's horrible. I mean, it is really horrible.
What do you mean, no blood pressure, no pulse?
Yeah. Whereas it's kind of faster in this one, I believe, if I recall. And it's not as kind of as heavy. It's not as
But
dark.
it's
really.
diluted, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know?
Whereas you feel their pain really, and the emotion and the stress of it. But again, it's kind of they've done that. You get Jimmy's kind of hand movements and really kind of weird kind of claws that he does when he's turning. He does that again. But obviously, you know, it's got to be a tonal shift a little bit really in this one. I like the idea of the army in this. You know, they're very much more prominent than they are in the first film, and you get to see the army, obviously, you know, patrolling the area and obviously what happens to them. And again, it gives that kind of really kind of
Well,
army
it's
fuck
a
up
lot,
kind of
a
thing.
lot broader in scale, isn't it? Because
is, yeah. It's open more.
Majority of the events in the original take place between the mortuary to the warehouse.
Yeah, it's
unit,
really, it's very
and the
confined.
graveyard,
Yeah.
whereas
This
now
is the
this
whole
one's a
town.
little bit more, a broader scale, isn't it?
It's a whole town, been taken over, which has been evacuated.
And a cameo appearance from Christine the Car by the looks there. Oh, that will be my dog there. Sorry, well, I'm not sure what his thoughts are on this particular scene.
Am I wrong, or is that guy there in the middle, the guy out of X-Files? Mitch somebody? there?
It is as well.
Yeah, he
and
plays-
who was in Shocker.
Shocker, he was the villain in Shocker. Oh, what's his name in Shocker? Wes Craven's film, wasn't it?
It was.
Yeah, he... I think we approached him with a book as well. We couldn't get hold of him. Again, with the book 2010, we started working in 2008. It was a lot harder back then to actually get hold of people. Even though Facebook was kind of just about 2 or 3 years old,
Yeah.
it was a lot more difficult. Now it's a lot more easier to get hold of direct actors, especially on films from the 80s where they're not so much in movies now, and they are doing a lot of conventions to get hold of people.
I think for some of them, it's always just that kind of realise they never actually realise what these films have become.
Yeah.
They're surprised that
we've
there's
noticed
an
ourselves.
audience,
that
you
kind
know.
of. I know Return of the Dead people. They said literally it was like only 10 years, probably 10 years ago, they actually realised how big the film was.
Yeah.
And I know Thor who plays Billy in this, and obviously Michael Kenworthy, had no idea the scope of this movie. Had no idea that it had a fan base until obviously we approached them for the book and went, hello, you made this film 15, 20 years ago. Do you mind talking about it? And straight away, they're straight on it, and I think that's.
I was young. I needed the money.
Exactly, yeah. But again, I mentioned earlier on, he's embracing his zombiness in this film, which is a lot different to his interpretation.
Well,
of the
because
first film.
because and again, I suppose you can't just do it, make a carbon copy, but
No, and then they're eating animals here, the bastard. Look at them. Eating dogs.
can't eat dogs. That was a preemptive growl. From
That
my dog
really
back
is
there.
more annoying to me than eating humans.
Well, animals getting hurt in films,
Yeah,
full
yeah.
stop.
I'm not sure where this obviously would be on location. This would have been, and again, we've been to the States a few times, and obviously people watching this. live
And we
in the
didn't see
States.
any zombies,
No, but
disappointing.
these kind of streets are so familiar. I mean, where Dark Dales is in LA,
Yeah.
on that street, we all say that when we saw it.
Halloween Town.
Yeah, by Halloween Town. We all, me and you all say that when we.
Yeah.
It reminds us of Return of the Living Dead Part 2 on that street does. It's so
Yeah.
similar. It's kind of very suburbia. And now this is an interesting development now in the Return of the franchise, which like the zombies die from electrocution. Now,
No way.
that never happened in the first
Well,
one. You can't.
and again,
It never. It was
that's
never
what
repeated.
added to
yeah.
the helplessness of the
Yeah.
original one, is that no matter how much you dissected them or you broke them down, they'd still keep coming after you. Whereas
yeah.
obviously the traditional
There's a way of
method, as we
destroying
all
them. This
know-
one was actually a way, whereas in the first one it ends on kind of sour note.
Oh, that's why. Spoiler alert. There's that whole. That's what the. It's all coming back to me now a bit. That's
Yeah.
what the ending
Yeah,
is with the pylons. Yeah.
But apparently, you know, a bit more trivia for you is that it cost about $50,000 just to do those keyframing for the electrocution scenes in this. Whereas now,
Well, it's because, of course, it was
optical, yeah.
wasn't it?
Which, you know, we know there's some people we know who do that, who did that back in the day. Now you do it in 10 seconds flat. You know, on any kind of cheap editing suite,
download
really.
a green screen comp.
Oh
off
yeah,
YouTube.
you would do, yeah. But obviously back then it was kind of such a really hard process to go through.
Well, it was a frame by
time-consuming.
frame. Yeah.
And I think, you know, I like the idea that they kind of really move that kind of zombie kind of mythology really in this film. And there's a way of killing them.
Yeah.
It isn't just hopelessness, whereas in the first film it is hopelessness.
Well, it is. It's, yeah.
You know, you
Hence-
burn them, they come back.
Yeah.
And it makes more. Whereas in this one, at least you can electrocute them.
Yeah.
A funny bit happens in a minute on this. I think...
Is there some funny bits?
Yeah. I may have been wrong actually, Ryan. I think she pulls a jaw off a zombie in this scene and punches a zombie in the
She
face.
punched
earlier
the
on,
one that, she
So
turned
this was done by a puppet and an actor. So this is the actor standing there now, and it's replaced in a second now by a puppet. Again,
well, disappointing. You'd think they'd really do that, wouldn't you? I suppose because if it was a non-union film, you could have got away
you would
with
have
that.
done it, yeah. But again, it's nice effect.
Speaking of the union situation, so there were pickets on
Yeah.
the first day of production. Did that change the production?
I think it wasn't the fact that it was non-union, the fact that he said it was going to be non-union, and he kind of dropped himself
Oh,
in
so
it, really.
he said it was going to be, but I
Yeah,
guess it
yeah,
never
and I
was
think he
ultimately.
dropped himself in it by being a bit kind of producery and mouthy, and not knowing obviously how to handle the press either. Now, this is a really weird scene for me, and as a kid it was always weird. Now, when she gives in and allows him to bite her brains, she kind of has an orgasm, really. It's very orgasmic.
I shall be speaking to the wife later.
But it's kind of, you know, it's does she? We do know in the first film you get bit, you become a zombie.
She likes that, doesn't she?
Yeah. So she maybe they went off to zombie land, living happily ever after. But the interesting thing is you don't see Ed or Joey in the electrocution scene at the end. Where are they?
So is that it? Is that all we've seen?
So
of them?
that's it now. You never see them two again now.
That to me is kind of then a bit of an issue that you haven't
Yeah.
got like a.
So let's give a
So
round of
that's it.
applause for Joey and Ed, their last scenes.
And again, that's what I'm not. Yeah, I mean, you had a wonderful ending to. Well, both of them.
characters, yeah,
Really,
amazing.
in the original,
You've got
I mean, Jimmy's was
Suicide,
perfect.
yeah.
You know, that kiss in the ring and everything, and then of course,
not a euphemism.
kissing the
Wedding ring. Even worse.
Even worse. Yeah. I mean, that's legal, but the
gold ring.
But you've got a nice kind of
You got a nice closure for that character. Yeah.
arc, I
It
guess
is
you
an
would
arc,
say.
it
in
is,
this way.
100%.
It has, and just to kind of drop them like that, and
Yeah.
do you know what? They're not minor characters, so they're to me instantly as a kind of.
There's
but
no
then again,
closure at all.
as we've discussed already, the Return of the Living Dead isms, if you will, were kind of shoehorned into an existing
script,
script.
yeah,
So
yeah.
really, I suppose, whatever stage of the production they were at, upon the further script
But
development.
again, it'd be interesting to see the script. Really, I mean, I've never come across it in all the years. Obviously, archiving stuff like this for these films.
And that's not online either?
No, it's not. So I
Really?
mean, I'm not sure how different it might have been. If you're putting brand new characters, you're putting like Ed and Joey's characters into it. That's a completely different theme. It's different arc for the whole story. whether you're already in the script already. You know, I'm sure Ken may go into detail and stuff like that.
That's where the audience right now are going, quick, change, where's that audio button to go
But
back to audio
you hear
commentary 1?
You hear these sort of time anyway, say, oh, it wasn't written for this, and it was shoehorned in. The Hellraiser film's been an argument for that. A little bit more easy to do that, and you can notice that in Hellraiser sequels, that you've got a police
that
drama.
Was from like 5 onwards,
yeah.
wasn't it?
You got police drama, and you got Pinhead appears. Was this? It's a zombie film.
Yeah.
It's a zombie film with running zombies, eating brains, trucks and tanks, same kind of characters. How much was changed, or how much do you know was already there in the first place? Was Doc Mandel in it? Was the kid in it?
I mean, I assume. My thoughts would be really is that, I mean, let's just look at it now. That the elements of Return of the Living Dead we are witnessing thus far are obviously the return of the 2 characters, the trioxin,
and obviously Glover as well.
The main thing, Glover, but they're the main thing. So really, very likely, you had the script written of kids, suburbia.
A Goonies kind of thing,
a Goonies
zombies,
kind of affair, you know, a light-hearted, again, comedy horror.
Yeah.
So really, you know, it just makes me wonder the completion of those characters, not showing it, that it must be right. Okay, they appear.
But even saying that, if you had any movie, you've got 2 kind of major characters you've got from the beginning of the movie who disappear now for the final 20 minutes.
Very bloodless shootout here again.
We are zombies, Christopher.
There's got to be. There's got to be.
Dust.
Tiny to me. Dust. All right, Marjorie Dawes. Dust.
For those who don't know who Marjorie Dawes is, just Google it, please.
It's a Little Britain. You'll see it.
Yeah.
Dust.
So they've all obviously that these are brain-eating zombies. So they go to this meat-packing factory to go and get zombie brains. Now they need those brains to entice the zombies to the power plant.
So this is we're setting up now for the final.
The finale,
showdown.
You've got the final act now. Really,
Goes
I mean,
quite
they can
quick,
drive
this,
as well.
doesn't it?
Zombies can in this one.
Wow.
But on that T-shirt which was earlier on, that's I always remember on the T-shirt as well, was the army jeep with zombies hanging out of it as well. I remember having one of those ones.
How did you get that? Did you call
I
Triumph?
know I would have got mine off eBay a long time ago. As you know, I kind of aficionado on these films.
No, really? You're
yeah.
not the Gary Smart.
I am the Gary Smart, yeah. And you are the Christian. Not Christian Sellers, Christian Griffiths. You're not even
Christian
that.
Griffiths.
Christopher Griffiths.
We said we were going to attempt a drunken Terry, but
Yeah,
you know,
I think
we've
we are.
been sipping on black coffee and Diet Coke, not together.
Not together, of course.
But yeah, I think we should have maybe now at this point. Do you
should
think we
have
should
done.
just like rewind and
Should we just start again?
start from scratch? Yeah. Maybe we could offer like Scream, like, you know, 3 commentaries or something. You know, take your pick, mix them together.
Or just Karen doing this?
That's a good point.
But again, we know writing a script where zombies drive, that is the completely comedic theme, isn't it? You know, you're moving straight into that kind of let's make an all-out comedy. You know, Return of the Living Dead didn't have zombies; they had zombies running, zombies being a bit more kind of proactive in their attacks, like Cornwall paramedics, Cornwall cops, send more cops, but you ain't getting it in here. I mean, it would have been nice, I think, as well, to have that line as well, maybe thrown in, send more paramedics, something like that in here as well. I think that's maybe just me wanting to obviously link it a bit more to the first film.
Sorry.
I mean, you know, Dana Ashbrook, you mentioned about obviously being in Twin Peaks now, so you're a huge Twin Peaks fan, aren't you?
Oh, massive.
So, you know,
massive,
did you put a connection yourself when you were a kid watching this? I mean,
So-
how long after was Twin Peaks to this?
Oh, what the link on the,
Yeah.
for the films? So this was 1988,
88,
the year
yeah.
of my birth.
Oh,
There you go.
Two
Another
great things
fact.
happened,
Two
and
great
then you were
things
born.
happened. Yeah. But yeah, Twin Peaks was 89, 90. You know, the pilot was shot in probably 88, to be honest. So he very likely went straight from, I mean, not literally, you know, left this zombie-ridden world and just went up to Twin Peaks. But yeah, there's only about a year's difference. But like I said, I saw this film quite late. So, you know, watching it now, I'm appreciating the cinematography and the fact that
it's
the dialogue
beautifully shot.
contained within it is probably
Yeah.
better than what we're saying. But I think just for me, this is, again, I'm
Westville's
still
made up town as well.
I'm still feeling the same about this as I did first time. I mean, I don't actually. I'm preferring
think
it a
I-
second
I
time. I
think,
think
yeah.
the more I view it, and the fact I've got over not the shock as I said before, but the fact that it's just so light-hearted. By
It's the same for
comparison.
me. I remember being a kid watching Return of the Dead Part 3 back in 1993, was it the third film came out?
Yeah.
And being completely upset, really, and angry. It wasn't like this, actually more like this than the first film. And again, you appreciate films as you get older, as we know, that you can appreciate the fact of why they were made and how they're made and why the tone and shit. And again, it's of its period as well. You wouldn't have got all that comedy for the third film in 1993. Whereas this one, again, it's the late 80s. You're starting to get police academy movies start developing, the series starts coming out. You start getting kind of like the splash movies kind of coming out. And all. These films start, you've got a real peak of comedy in the 80s, which you more so than you ever did in the 1970s and 90s. So it's of its time. It annoyed fans, I think, but again, it probably found a different audience really itself.
Do you recall? I mean, like upon your research, if you can remember, do you know what the kind of reception was to this? I'm always curious
it
as to
didn't have
what.
great critical response.
Did it have a
really,
big
no.
cinema release?
It didn't know either.
No.
Again, it's sort of financing of the movie. It had a kind of small release in the first film, but I think it was pretty much panned. Really, the second film was.
If I'm right in saying it, I think it holds close to a 0 on Rotten Tomatoes.
it does,
Not
yeah,
that
yeah.
we do at all abide by what Rotten Tomatoes.
And what
sorry,
Martin Scorsese just said about Rotten Tomatoes, it's destroying the film industry.
Yeah.
Because obviously straight away people are going straight on there and surmising the film's going to be good
I've
or
never
bad.
really used Rotten
I
Tomatoes.
haven't used it, no.
I can't say that I've,
But again,
unless
how can we get a 0 rating when you've got a
there's
fandom for it?
far worse. There's
Well,
far
you've got a
worse.
fandom for
This-
it where you've
it's-
got a massive following for
for
it
the
still.
most part, this is I would, looking at it now upon this viewing, it's a technically competent
Yeah.
film. I think it's
Well, you've got
lacking in the screenplay, without a doubt,
Yeah.
and not massively, don't get me wrong, I'm not, again, there's far worse written films, but I do not understand why I'd get a 0.
I think it's just because it's annoying that some films are remembered for the wrong reasons, and I think because of when you remember back in the day it being bad, that they're not appreciated. Other films have a real turnaround, like Day of the Dead was slammed by the critics back in '85, and now is a cult classic.
Yeah,
It's
there's
become a
that.
massive, and actually a lot of people, it's their favourite Romero film, was back in the day it wasn't, because it was totally different. Well, I think in this film it kind of has a reputation which isn't really fair, and I think a lot of people follow, as you said, websites like Rotten Tomatoes and film websites like that, and take that as gospel really, and don't actually revisit it. But again, as we said before at the beginning of this commentary, that we've just seen the kind of my feed on Facebook as well as yours on Twitter was all about this film when it was announced it was going to be released. So there's obviously following for it, there's a love for it, there's an affection for it, so fair play to it. And it's a shame that it gets such a low rating, but it doesn't deserve it.
But then think how many titles that the likes of Scream Factory, Arrow, etc. They've got their audience. So
Yeah, But again,
and
as
you
I
know,
said,
what,
it's-
there's things in amongst the catalogues of aforementioned companies which I love.
yeah.
And then there's things that I don't love at all that I want.
I'm
back.
just-
But
yeah.
you know what? There's certain things for everyone. There's certain things.
I was probably when it's 88 this came out, so I would have been 6 when this came out, so I would have had memories of watching this when it first came out.
Do you remember seeing this for
I
the
remember
first
seeing
time?
it on Sky Movies for the first time. And Sky Movies came out on the UK. Sky Movies is a like a cable, basically it's like cable TV.
Didn't have Sky Movies in
It
the
came out in
States?
'89. Sky Movies did. When we first got, we were one of the first people to get Sky.
Oh,
We were very posh, as you know.
yeah,
And I had
Birmingham.
watched Return of the Living Dead. Yes, from Birmingham. I had watched Return of the Living Dead and I've been a huge fan of the first film.
So you saw them in sequence in
I saw
order?
the sequence, yeah, and I
Chronological
remember
order?
watching this on its premiere night, 89, 90 it would have been, and waiting up with my dad
Yeah,
to
yeah.
watch it and loving
Good
it,
parenthood, yeah.
absolutely loving it, and because it was funny.
And do you know what?
But notice Don wasn't in it as a favourite
Yeah, yeah.
character even back then.
See, again, then that sustains this kind of the idea that sounds nice, romanticized.
Yeah, I
not
think you're right.
romantic,
I
but,
think it is,
You know,
yeah.
kind of, first time viewing it, and
It's
there's
like
probably
I
a lot
always-
of films that I've seen.
We've talked about this before, haven't we? Me and you, many
Yeah.
times about music. When you listen, music brings you back to a place where we used to be. It brings back memories. Music does.
Yeah, yeah. And film can.
And film does the same
yeah.
for me. And I think film is very powerful in that sense. That you can remember where you were, or it brings back memories of childhood, nice memories,
Well,
sometimes bad memories.
You remember waiting up all night
But
to
yeah,
watch
yeah,
this
fuzzy
as a
feeling in your
6-year-old
stomach,
or
yeah.
7-year-old.
Yeah.
Whereas my encounter is unbelievably unmemorable, and it's very likely I picked up the DVD and popped it on one day, like any other.
yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Whereas the first one, it was at a time where I started to see all these films pre the certificate age, and some really stood out to me with the original on seeing that on VHS for the first time through my dad. So
I think people know I'm a big fan of the Dan O'Bannon franchise as opposed to Romero. I love Romero films, but for me, the O'Bannon films the O'Bannon film is the best zombie film. Sorry, I just think it is. So again, this holds a very close place in my heart because of that connection. But then again, if you watch this and watch Day of the Dead back in the day, 85, it's completely different. It is totally different, and it's. I think it's probably better.
This was like a heyday for zombie genre, right? You had. They were already experimenting, if not more. Well, they are now, but the zombie genre now is.
It's come back, hasn't it?
To be honest, let's be fair. In my opinion, as not a massive fan of Walking Dead, it's tiresome in that respect.
I think
controversial.
It is
there from Chris
I
Griffiths.
think the problem with zombie genre was, and we know that in '85 you had Return of the Living Dead, and then you also had Thriller, and then Thriller basically made zombies funny. And it did. It took away the scare.
Well, no, it
scariness of
threw
zombies.
him right into the pop culture stratosphere.
And it took away the
really,
scariness.
didn't it?
When you got dancing zombies, it takes away the scariness.
Well, makeup-wise, they were pretty
No,
elaborate.
the makeup's not a question. What I'm saying is, you've got these really scary Miro stuff, and it completely changes and shifts it. So what happens then for you is that, and filmmakers, do you make a zombie film which isn't scary anymore because zombies are a bit of a joke and a bit of a laugh, and they connect to Michael Jackson? That's what happened in the 80s with zombies. That's why you'll notice by the 90s they're gone. The genre is completely gone. And only with Resident Evil games, the zombies started to become more popular.
Yeah.
And then the films came out, 28 days later came out, the remakes Dawn of the Dead, and Day of the Dead remake, which wasn't very good. But then, what happened is that Walking Dead brought them back in, and yet it's mainstream again now. But this was at a time where zombies were starting to slowly disappear.
But there was a lot of sort of experimentation though, right? Because you had, I can't think of it. Is it the Fred Dekker movie, Night of the
Comet?
Night of the Creeps.
Night of the Creeps, yeah, sorry.
There's the Comet as well, isn't
Comet,
it?
Yeah.
So I mean, there's certainly experimentation with the zombie genre at this point.
We're
You
going
know,
to
this is
I'm going
88.
to interrupt you 1 second
course you may.
because
Is this the 15
it's going
grand
to be the shot of the Thriller zombie, which was Brian Peck, who decided on the spot to basically improvise and go and grab a jacket. Said to Ken Wiederhorn, "Should I do this shot?" And he kind of went no, and he turned up on the set, did it, and he kept it in. And you know what? I do think, as much as it's kooky and it's kind of funny, it does take away a little bit from the movie. Because Michael Jackson's pop sort of completely.
I think it's one of those things that I knew about before seeing it.
Yeah,
and whereas it could have been possibly done in a nice, subtle manner.
It isn't. It's in your face. It's literally.
It looks like an outtake that was basically kept in.
Yeah, I mean, if that was done now, it would have been either reducing its length or cut completely. I just think it doesn't help with the criticism about the comedic element in the film. It's great. It's memorable, and everyone remembers the Michael Jackson zombie in this.
Just the execution's pretty kitschy.
Yeah, and I think again it was done on the day of the set. You know, it was Brian Peck playing him. Now Brian Peck was only meant to come on as a favour to Kenny Myers, who we were very close to, and he ended up doing quite a lot of zombies really in this.
He's very passionate about the because obviously he provided the narration for the documentary.
He did,
as well,
yeah.
So incredibly sort of passionate about his
franchise,
involvement in
yeah.
the franchise.
Well, he's in the 3 films. He's in the third one as a ballistic technician. He plays in the
beginning,
third
isn't he?
film at the very beginning, yeah.
Yeah.
So it's kind of it hasn't come up yet. it's kooky,
I know, yeah.
but we talk about it. Sorry, it hasn't come up, but you'll see in a second. We'll refer to it again. I mean, this is the death of Thor Van Lingen's character of Billy.
There's quite a lot of these optical
There's quite a lot.
electrocutions.
No one
I mean, to be
grand.
fair, yeah, 5-0 or 1-5?
50.
5-0.
Yeah. Here we go. I mean, it literally walk into
it's-
frame. It's not even sort of in the background.
It's.
I just think it's
it's
memorable and
just-
it's funny, but it's just it adds to the criticism, I think, with the film. And I think
I think the
you could re-edit this film. I think
execution could have been just a lot more subtle.
you could re-edit this film with a different soundtrack, different tone, regards to take some of the comedic bits out. I think it'd be different. It would be a completely different film. It doesn't need the funny bits. It doesn't need the stepping on the hand and the
thing
head. It
is,
doesn't need falling down
I
the
think
hole.
there's just the execution of comedy, and I really think I dare imagine what it must be like to try and execute a horror
Well, comedy's the hardest
thing is,
genre to film.
It
Isn't
is,
it?
but
Right?
no, but I mean, getting a really nice balance, like the original film, which is
was
both
fluke, really,
intense. But then you say that is probably down to
But
Dan
you had
O'Bannon.
you had a
Dan
genius
O'Bannon
yeah.
is incredibly.
But then again, people who made the film, the actors will testify they didn't think making a comedy. So Clu Gulager did not think he was making a comedic film.
Yeah.
He had no idea. That's why I think it works really well. And a lot of people were irritated by Jimmy Cameron because they thought, hang on, this guy's being a bit too
Over
funny
the
here.
top, yeah.
But actually, he knew straight away. Jimmy did. He knew being friends with Buster Keaton, having that kind of really old-fashioned comedy.
Yeah.
He knew what was committing timing. Whereas the reason why it's popular is because the actors don't realise they're doing it.
Well,
So
it's
the
when it's
deadpan
kind of
plays.
played like sort
I mean,
of straight.
this, get the damn screwdriver out of my head, and kind of,
See, it's just kind of in your face. Whereas, like, and again, I'll say with like Chainsaw Massacre 2, I mean, I suppose this is the thing. This is a comedy, and then the original Return of the Dead, Chainsaw Massacre 2 are black comedies. I must have the same criticism for Friday the 13th Part 6.
yeah.
It's comedy that's kind of
I
self-aware.
It feels
it's
forced.
cool,
It feels
forced.
No, but saying that, I've enjoyed watching it again today. I think it's a great film. It's a great cult film.
I mean, I've been monitoring the audio of our voices, and we sound, as before, terrible. But visually, though, watching this film, having not been able to hear the dialogue, just because we want to make sure for syncing issues, it's an attractive
It's a great
looking
film. It's an attractive looking film. The effects are good, despite the fact the comedic and in the execution, they're amazing special effects, regards to the makeup effects. And
Yeah, I think the
animatronics.
cinematography is lovely as well,
I think
to be honest.
Jimmy's brilliant again. Tommy's great again. Michael does a fantastic job actually. As a young actor, he does a very good job. Michael Kenworthy does.
Yeah.
I think a lot of credit there for being maybe 10, 11 years old maybe at the time. Fair play from obviously putting the film off, really carrying a film to a degree. And actually, Philip Bruns isn't too bad. It said. For me, it's different because I would have liked to see Don in the role, but I think it was nice for him to be in it. Yeah. And again, it was kind of, it's a nice sequel to the first film, nice links, and then you had to wait until '93 then for the third film to come out, which again is completely different. Justin's film, dark, moody, romantic to a degree, and again very, very gory. So I think this stands really nice in those 5 films. Really, it's not.
It's its own thing.
It's its own
but it's
thing.
still a sequel.
You don't have to have watched the first film, but you can appreciate it if you have.
Yeah.
And I've really enjoyed watching it today, and I think that hopefully fans will enjoy it as well. Apologise in advance if you listen to us and bore the hell out of you. We did have some good
Apologise in
feedback.
advance, I think. Apologise in hindsight. Jeez.
Apologise.
By the way, guys,
Yeah.
this commentary may or may not suck.
Yeah.
If you've just listened to the last 90
Listen
minutes.
to the end, yeah. I think we kind of enjoy doing these, and we're happy that Scream asked us to do this and Shout asked us to do this because we love these films. We do it from a fan point of view as well.
Yeah.
And we making films ourselves now, and we're also working documentaries. We can really look into, I think, the kind of how films are made and why they're made and appreciate it. So hopefully we've been a bit informative. We haven't given too much away in the sense of what the directors always talked about and the cast. Again, this is a great film. You've obviously enjoyed the film because you bought the Blu-ray. Go and watch it again. Hopefully there's loads of extra bonus features on here as well you're going to enjoy. And until next time, please shout, do Return of the Dead Part 3, and we'll come back for that one. But we'll do it again.
This has been Chris Griffiths and Gary Smart. We hope we haven't offended anyone, and we look very much forward to bothering your ears next time.
What is this, man? Mabel, I think we're in the wrong theater.